Greetings, friends. It's another quick vlog here. I've been studying all day at the lab, prepping for my final anatomy practical, and I thought I would take a quick break to do a vlog and to keep the channel rolling. Today I wanted to talk about something that's been really sitting on my mind. I see this huge movement towards minimalism, and it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to the ridiculous consumerism that's seen in a lot of Western countries, especially the United States. And I think that the idea of minimalism is idealistic. I tried to partake in it myself when I was younger. I had all of my possessions down to less than 10 boxes. This is how I live my life. I rarely bought anything that wasn't from a thrift store or dumpster dove, and I thought that this was a superior way to live. I considered it much like being a monk. I've kind of come to a place in my life right now where I don't regret that being part of my path. It was a good learning experience, but I realize for me, how erroneous those thoughts and decisions were, and I have some reasons why that is. I want to talk about just the idea of being a minimalist and what I ended up doing a lot. So I had this romantic idea that I was living very monk-like, and that I was had a very light footprint, and that I wasn't treading on others, and that I wasn't putting so much back into dumpsters and so on. But what happened a lot with my minimalist lifestyle was that I ended up really being very reliant on others and imposing myself on others in a lot of different ways. Like if I had to borrow something, if I had to ask a friend to help me move again, if I had to, couldn't go out camping with folks because I didn't have the equipment because everything was so streamlined and minimalist. Those are just a couple of quick ideas, but you can sort of fill in the blank. And really, the big thing for me was how much I leaned and relied on others, and it became very apparent at a few times that it was a negative. That people didn't always want me to ask to borrow X, X, and Y. That people didn't always want to be the one that I called when I needed to move again because I didn't have a car. I didn't get a car until I was 40. I thought that that was a noble endeavor. And in some ways, I still think it was the right choice because I lived in the city. Because I was a minimalist, and I didn't partake in society in the way other people do, the amount of money that I had was also limited. So I couldn't really just go out and rent a car because I didn't have a credit card. And because I didn't have because that was also part of it, like not having a credit card, not buying into a broken system, meant that I couldn't get a rental or things like this, and I relied on others to provide those services for me, and it became really problematic. So starting with that, and then moving on to just cohabitating with humans. So I would just always live in basement closets or basement rooms and really packed houses, or in small apartments where the rent was really cheap, and normally people upstairs were doing drugs at 2 in the morning, and I would never get any sleep. And it just kind of came to this thing where I never had space. I never had a place where I could do projects. I was very limited and restricted by my living. And I'm a really creative person, and I like to build things. I like to grow food, and that just wasn't good enough for me. So I really, you can rent a house, but the amount of money you're going to pay into and lose renting a house is a ridiculous negative investment. I can't imagine why anyone would rent a house. That's a really poor financial choice. So for me, I wanted to be weighed down with the idea of getting stuck in a mortgage and having to be owned by what I own. But having a house means that nobody's telling me what color I can paint the walls. Nobody's telling me I can't build a shelf if I want to. Nobody's telling me what kind of music I can play when the quiet times are. Nobody's telling me what things I can plant there. I have the opportunity to build a permaculture food forest, which was a huge goal of mine. I'm allowed to create a zero carbon food footprint, resulting in that. which is part of my personal direct action to be a conservationist and to help ecosystems. I cut down on the plastic packaging. I buy canning my own foods. I don't ship foods in. I mean, I do to a certain extent, but when we're in full production, I'll pretty much be eating mostly off our food, maybe with the exception of a few staples and so on. So by being owned by what owns me, I'm actually able to participate in direct action. By building a garden instead of having a lawn, I'm increasing urban biodiversity, which is really important. I am taking a parcel in an urban environment and I'm making sure that it's chemical free. So I'm being part of the solution by not being a minimalist, being having a DIY ethic. So my punk background in my whole life, DIY is something I was born with, raised with, and will be for the rest of my life. I respect DIY, and I think more people should be capable of doing a lot of things. I can build, I can do some plumbing, a bit of electrical, I can fix bikes. I do things for myself. I don't pay and rely on others to do them for me. And that requires that I have a lot of tools. And believe me, once you get going in tools, you're no longer a minimalist. I have tools for fine woodworking. I have tools for framing. I have tools for plumbing, electrical. I have tools for gardening, for orchard work. And yeah, you could hypothetically rent tools. You could belong to some sort of group that does like a tool rental, but that requires a lack of independence. So I can't wake up in the morning and just go, boom, I want to build this today. I might be getting tools that are really crappy because other people don't know how to use them or don't have the same sense of taking care of them as I do. That's a really hugely important thing for me. Um, a lot of people who are not minimalist end up borrowing stuff from other people. They're always relying on other people to spend the money and to do the upkeep and have the maintenance to have something. And then they just ask if they can borrow it because that seems like an okay thing. But in reality, it's a huge imposition on most people over time. The next thing is a lot of the things that I own that own me are investments. So, house and everything. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but like going to school, owning a house, these are investments in myself that will come back and reap a harvest at a later time. And believe me, I've been in the positions before when I didn't build equity, when I didn't have an education, and there were doors that were so closed to me. So you're stuck. There's no upward mobility. There's no expanding your potential. There's really, it's difficult to get the kind of finances that can really catapult you into the next category of having freedom. And that's what it comes in, freedom to do what I want to do. So moving out of minimalism, being owned by my things, making investments into myself, and being integrated in society in that way also means that I have the potential to build a lot of money. And money gives me the freedom to do what I want to do, and not be restricted. I don't have to travel to third world countries because that's the only place that I can go where it's cheap. I have choices, and I'm very fortunate to be able to build those things in my life. Um, and I did exactly that. I built that. I came from very humble, poor beginnings in my life, and I'm slowly building up because I'm putting back into myself. But also just the freedom to do things like I really want to do this project with buying a huge permaculture setup and turning it into a land trust. That's coming from my work, from not being a minimalist, and from doing like a lot of investment things. And it comes back to this whole aspect of being really independent. I am not reliant on a bunch of people pulling money. If you want to do that, that's okay. But I don't like relying on others because they inevitably, someone drops the ball. I'm like, consider myself a rugged individualist and independent. And to be frank, I like to do things my own way. I'm a really hard worker, and I don't like generally being in groups where a lot of people are hangers on who don't want to work as hard as I do. So for me, I more often like to just work independently, and that's just a personal, I don't know, attribute, I guess. And this comes back to being really like choosing to want to be integrated in society instead of being a dropout. Now, not all minimalists are dropouts. A lot of minimalists are, and I definitely was when I was younger. But moving into being integrated has changed things quite a bit. I actually really enjoy paying land taxes. I enjoy paying school taxes, and I enjoy paying income taxes. And here's why. I like an educated population. I like roads. I use them all the time. I like that there's people who fight forest fires because I want to protect forests. I like that there's government that creates infrastructures like bridges that comes to the rescue when there's really bad problems. Um, and there are definitely, without question, problems in our society and how our government does things. But I don't feel like you have a leg to stand on if you're not willing to integrate and work to change them. Um, Grassroots movements very rarely take off and make major change in society. Most of the major change in society comes from people like Elizabeth Warren is a great example, or Bernie Sanders is a great example. These are people who are tirelessly dedicating themselves to their education and to their public service and to integration into the system, and a willingness to sacrifice themselves, their playtime, their fun time, their I'm only going to do what I want. Guaranteed those two are not waking up every day thinking, I'm going to face this battle bullshit again. No, they're doing it because they believe in what they're working for. And they know that if we really want to enact change, we have to integrate into the system to change it. And we have to stand strong, and we have to get up every morning when we're tired, and we have to move on. And I recognize that in the people that I really admired, and that is why I made the choice to go to school, to get into debt, to be owned, and to get a job that will own me and dictate the rest of my life. So that is my position, and I'm going to have some more philosophical conversations around this, but that's just an introduction into why I'm not a minimalist and why I believe in being owned by what owns me. And to just kind of wrap that up, though, is to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't believe in limitless consumption of you name it. I think that owning and not being a minimalist comes with responsibility, and that first responsibility is to our environment, and our second responsibility is to our fellow man. And I think that we need to start having some what I like to consider intelligent consumerism as the future of humanity. It's important to keep society running, and being a consumerist is part of that. Making sure people are gainfully employed, but setting it up so that the quality of life is a priority, and that can be done without being a minimalist. So that's my video. Let me know what you think. Add your content in the comments below. Tell me if you've had changes of heart one way or another, where you're at right now, why you think it's good. Would you consider something different? What do you think we need to do as a society to maintain a strong infrastructure without destroying our planet? All right.